Okay, new camera, bear with, don't know what I'm doing. Looks like everything is working as it should, so let's jump straight in. If I need to refilm this video 20 times because I'm not a pro with technology, so be it. What will be will be. Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel today, guys. It's been a really long time since I sat down and had a big, what feels like a big catch up with you guys and answered some questions. I've really missed like catching up. I think that's something I've been craving a bit recently. Like, my energy at the moment has just been really quite low in terms of everything, really. Not in a bad way, but like socially I have really slowed down recently. I feel like the changing of seasons, the coming into autumn, winter, the colder weather, it's a real reminder to all of us to slow down and for things to change and to let go of the old and let in the new. And I've just been really focusing on what I need and what my body needs. And this is a very long-winded way of saying I'm really grateful to be doing this video with you all, but I just feel like even though I've been uploading vlogs and it's not like I'm hiding anything at all, or I don't talk about things on my vlogs, sometimes it's just really nice to sit and really connect to you guys. And I feel like this Q&A is exactly what the doctor ordered today. So I hope everybody's having a lovely week. I put some affirmations on my story this morning because they've really been something I've been into recently. I've been feeling quite a big sense of like, what can feel overwhelming anxiety when I wake up first thing. It just feels as if I've always got something sat on my chest, or I've always got something that I need to be thinking about. Affirmations and morning, not necessarily meditations, but just deep breathing and picturing myself surrounded by white light is something that helps ease off the morning anxious thoughts. So I just want you to know, if you're not having a really lovely week, even though I hope you are, that's okay. Do what you need to do. You're here where you are right now because you're supposed to be here where you are right now. The productivity and busyness and craziness of life can come exactly when it's supposed to, but if you need a bit of a quiet moment, a quiet period in your life this week, this month, take it. There were lots of motherhood ones today, which I was really pleased to see because I've been wanting to speak more about motherhood. I have so many thoughts and feelings on motherhood. I have been blessed to be a part of the motherhood group for 15 months now. Saint is 15 months old, guys. I can't believe he's going to be a year and a half like that. Motherhood, I'm gonna say, is probably the best season of my whole life so far. I never really feel as if, like, I don't know, my vlogs or just my social media in general is really the place to discuss it. I mean, I guess it is, of course it is, but I've been trying to find the transition and the balance of like how much of motherhood and my son to really share, because you're a mum, you'll get it, like, motherhood becomes kind of you for a while. It's very easy to feel like you are losing your identity to motherhood when you get caught up in the day-to-day runnings of it. But at the same time, I'm quite like protective over how much of him I share and how much of my journey in motherhood I share. But then it feels like I'm kind of living a bit of a facade almost, because motherhood is like me, it's like who I am, but try not to make it all about that on social media. I don't know. Is this empty words? Am I just rambling? Anyway, my point was, motherhood is obviously a huge part of my life, and it was really nice to see lots of motherhood questions in there today, so thank you guys for that. Starting straight off with, how do you find having a toddler and running a business? Emma asks. I'm gonna be really honest, this is something I have really struggled with. And there are a couple of questions on mum guilt, which we're going to get into a bit later on, but I struggled so badly with mum guilt, focused around my work and focused around my lack of mental presence in Saint's life. It sounds bizarre because really there's hardly a second where Saint is not by my side. So I'm sure if you asked Saint, not that he can talk yet, but I'm sure he would be like, my mum's always with me, what are you talking about? Actually, when he was first born, there were lots of moments where it was very easy for me to slip back into my identity of who I was before having Saint, or at least trying to, because I feel like when you first have a baby, you're constantly trying to play catch up with getting back to the person you were before, right? Like, there's so much pressure on mums, on new mums from society, particularly the Western society, to snap back physically, mentally, emotionally, with your job. Like, it's almost just like, oh yeah, she's had a baby, so what? That's how we're kind of made to feel. But actually, do you know there are cultures out there, guys, where when a woman has a baby, it is like the expected thing for them to just be bedbound with the newborn for a month. A whole month. But that's just like the done thing, which in my opinion is how it should be. Like, oh my God, when I think back to when Saint was first born, I allowed myself no time to not soak it in, because I do feel like I soaked it in. I do feel like I soaked newborn life in, but in terms of me, like my attitude towards myself, I was so focused on, oh my God, but I need to do this, oh my God, but I need to film, oh my God, but this needs to go up, and you know, we're working to timelines here, people. It's like, whose timelines? Whose timelines? They're in your mind. And so I feel like, you know, upon reflecting on like particularly the first year of my life as a mum, I think I spent a lot of that time chasing the woman I used to be before I gave birth. Not really in terms of like my physical body or anything like that, but actually more just in the woman I was in work. Like, work was a huge part of my identity and my self-worth and who I placed myself as. And then obviously I had kind of like a solid 6 months off of work and off of the internet, and actually there was so much I learned from that. But a lot of my focus of mum guilt really did come from work and running a business. And I'm not saying I've got it nailed and sorted. Like, I definitely do still have moments where I wish like I could just spend 24/7 with him. Life doesn't work like that, but at the same time, I feel like something that has really helped me in terms of my like mum work life balance has been listening to the mum guilt and noting when it's kind of repeating itself, and if there's something I can do to sort it out. Like, sometimes, you know, I've thought, okay, what is this mum guilt really saying to me? It taught me that I was putting too much time and effort into my work. It taught me that I was taking away my own joy of those early months / early period of Saint's life, trying to chase an identity of myself that no longer was, because I was now a mother, not this like constant workaholic. As I've kind of scaled back a little bit here and allow myself like these days of the week just to have family time, and I'm just Saint's mum on those days, it means that I can almost honour my working side of me a little bit better, because I feel like working Ellie isn't 24/7 anymore. Like, she's dedicated to these days, but so is being a mum on these days, you know? So, a very long-winded way of answering how do you find having a toddler and running a business, and I don't know if that's the answer you were looking for, because I really went down the mum guilt route, but it's hard. Like, if you're like me and you love to dedicate 100% of yourself to the things you love the most in life, obviously your children is the most important priority. If the person you were before you had children is like, I love my work and the work is who I am, it's hard. And I think a lot of mums spend a lot of time really trying to find the balance. Cheyenne asks, do you ever see yourself living overseas? I think it's no secret that Connor and I have literally always said it would be our dream to live in the US. I have this amazing app called My Human Design, and I had a pop-up notification. I never get pop-up notifications from this app. If you guys are into spirituality, by the way, I'd really recommend it. It's like your whole like birth chart, energy type, your gifts, like all according to when and what time you were born and everything like that. Anyway, I had this thing pop up on my phone from it, and it said, if you have like a constant dream or idea in your life, don't ignore it, because that is your soul telling you that that is where they want you to go. Like, that is where the next stage or chapter of your life is. It's in this idea, and if you don't like recognize it, you're just going to keep getting the same lesson over and over again until you learn or build up the courage to do the idea. It's something that Connor and I have always dreamt of, and obviously it's not straightforward anymore. Like, we have a home and dogs and child. Like, it's not just the two of us, young, wild and free with no responsibility. We have families, we have friends, like we have a life here. Connor's nearly 30 years old. Like, he spent 30 years building his life here. So it would be a huge upheaval, but at the same time, I kind of feel like the best things happen outside of your comfort zone. I feel like I've proven that to myself enough times in my life to believe it. So who really knows? I just tell myself what will be. And maybe we'll have a zip code instead of a postcode one day. Maybe we won't. I don't know. But I will certainly keep you guys included in the journey. As someone who has also lost their mum, how did you find pregnancy / being a mum? I thought this was a really interesting question, and actually I get a lot of questions about grief and losing a parent a lot, and I feel like I go through waves of talking about it and being open about it, and then long waves of not talking about it. But as lots of you guys know, I lost my mum to a brain tumour back in March 2020, a day before the first lockdown happened, 6 months or so before I fell pregnant with my first child. We're only 2.5 years on from losing my mum, and 2.5 years is really nothing, right? But my life has changed so much. Like, if my mum was to just walk into my house today and we were to have a catch up about what's happened since she's been gone, I'd be like, where do I even start? You know? I must admit, there have of course been times when I found it really hard. I would say more so since I gave birth to Saint and have been a mother myself over my time being pregnant. Like, there were of course times being pregnant where I would be baby shopping and I would think what I would give my mum to be here doing this with me right now. Or like, you know, people would say, is your mum a birthing partner? Like, I bet your mum can't wait to be a grandma. Even seeing TikToks of people like telling their mum that they're having a baby for the first time. These were all like hard pills to swallow, right? But since actually having Saint, it's like every day. Sometimes not even like, oh, I wish my mum was here to see this, or I wish I could just take Saint over to her for a cup of tea right now. But also sometimes like, I wonder what my mum would have done with me if I did this as a toddler. Or like, I wonder if I liked this when I was Saint's age. Like, did I like broccoli or did I throw it on the floor like he does? It's all of those conversations, it's all of those memories that you never get to have. And because motherhood becomes such a huge part of your identity when you do become a mum, it's like trying to find a whole new identity of yourself without your own mum being present to witness it and guide you along on that journey. There's a really similar question actually to this by Rachel, who said, how is it being a mum without having your own mum? Does your inner child struggle? And I just wanted to touch on this because I actually wanted to shed a little bit of positivity and a little bit of light to anybody who is watching this without their mum or dad or parent around when they have children of their own. For me, motherhood has been so beautiful in healing so many parts of my inner child that I don't think would ever have been healed until I had a child of my own. Okay, this is getting into like muddy waters now, because as open and as honest as I've been my whole time online, there are still things to this day that I don't know if I will ever open up about, in terms of like things in my childhood and my young adolescence, and even things that were happening when I was online at the start. I do think one day I will talk about it and share, but not here, like not on YouTube or Instagram. It's something I actually really want to go deeper into on a whole different platform, something that feels more connected and more intimate. We'll get into that later, but there were so many parts of my life where I did not have, as much as I love my parents, I did not have the adult in my life that I really needed. I did not have the guidance that I needed. I felt very lonely a lot of the time. And like I said, that's really not to say anything about either of my parents, and it's hard to kind of like give 5 seconds of emotions worth here on a Q&A when there is so much backstory behind it. And like I said, one day I would love to talk about it and open up about everything. But my parents went through some stuff, you know? They had their own stuff to deal with, and it just meant that at points in my life, I just didn't have the adult that I needed, really. So through having my own child and allowing myself to step into the space of being the adult that Saint deserves and the adult that Saint needs, it's really allowed me, when I let it, to call my own inner child through and witness myself being the adult that I needed to. It's been painful at points. Like, there have been some emotional parts of my journey in motherhood, because even though every child is so different, it's just to be loved and to be seen and to be heard and to be accepted, right? So when I give that to Saint, there is a huge part of it that is actually giving it back to myself throughout the different ages of my life that I needed it. And I don't know if that's something I could do whilst being so aware that I'm doing it and learning it and going through it if I hadn't have lost my mum at the time I did. So I must admit that when I think about my mum not being here, that is what my focus really goes on, because I've been on such a huge self-development and real inner journey kind of since Saint's been born, really, that has been like where my grief has gone to. It's almost been like fuel for my own healing, as kind of contradictory as that might sound. So that's where my focus with my grief has really gone, instead of the sad thoughts about how my mum should be here and my mum should be witnessing this and I should be doing this with my mum. Of course those moments have come, and of course I allow myself to feel that emotion when those thoughts and feelings do pop up, but primarily for me, I've really tried to use that loss as a means to being the best mum I can be, because also my mum's loss taught me that you think you have forever and you don't. And I lost my mum when I was 24, and if I'm going to be gone when Saint is 24, just how I'm sure my mum would have if she knew that she was going to leave me when I was 24, it makes all the days count so much more, don't you think? Han asks, do you ever get intrusive thoughts? Intrusive thoughts is actually something I have really struggled with. Speak to my therapist, babe, she'll tell you everything. Intrusive thoughts and catastrophic thinking for a long time became like part of my thought process. Like, I didn't get through one day without either of those things happening. And if you guys don't know what either of them are, I'm gonna get out the definition so I don't get it all wrong. But intrusive thoughts are unwanted thoughts that can pop into our heads without warning at any time. They can be disturbing or even distressing. And catastrophizing is a way of thinking called a cognitive distortion. A person who has catastrophic thinking usually sees an unfavourable outcome to an event and then decides that if this outcome does happen, the results will be a disaster. Some examples are, if I fail this test, I'll never pass school and I'll be a total failure in life. That is a very general example, but for me, for example, for the first year after I lost my mum, every single time Connor would go in a car on his own, without me, I was convinced, I would convince myself and get myself so worked up that Connor was going to get into a car crash and die. Every single car journey he went on. Yeah, it's been a whole nother level with Saint. But through therapy, it's really helped. There are still like everyday instances where I have that. Sometimes I just get really horrible thoughts in my mind just come up out of the blue, out of nowhere, and it's like totally fake scenarios, but they always involve like Connor or Saint or one of the dogs, and they like shake me to my core because I believe it's going to happen for that split second. They are not pleasant and I would not recommend, but they are usually a response to some form of trauma, and I would really recommend seeking help if you do have either, because they are very unpleasant to deal with. And if you do struggle with either, I am sending you a big hug, and although that won't do much, just know you're not alone. But I would highly recommend that you do get some assistance with that. Daisy asks, how do you cope with the pressures of social media? It's pressure to look a certain way, and I think she goes on to say more, but obviously the question box only fits so much. The pressures of social media, I just feel like if they get too much, take a break. Take a break. Delete the apps. reground yourself in the real world, because this is where everything happens. This is where emotion is. This is where relationships are. Where's the pressure coming from? Really? The pressure is really coming from, at least I'm just speaking from experience, my own lack of self-worth and my own lack of belief in myself. Like, if those two things are where they should be, then everything I see on social media is just a bit of a highlight from everybody else. It's just a bit of fun. It's just a bit of lightheartedness. So I would argue that if you're feeling pressure from things you see on social media for the way you look, or for the way you should be, or for anything to change yourself because of what you've seen on social media, I think the real lesson there is to do the work on the trigger point that pressure from social media is pushing. Lucy asks, how do you block out what others think of you and not let it affect your day-to-day life? I think a good way to really think about answering this question is, how do you block out what others think of you? Don't worry about what others think of you. Think about what you think of yourself. According to your morals, your values, your experiences in your life, what do you consider a good person to be? Write down those characteristics. See how much of that you match. Really, what other people think of you is none of your business, because what other people think of you is just a projection of everything they've been through, of all of their life experiences and what's got them to the person that they are, with the thought patterns that they have, that has allowed them to come to the conclusion of the judgments that they have formed. They are really just projecting all of that onto a version of you that they have built in their mind. Like, it's a bit of a weird thing to feel and say out loud, but there are so many versions of you in other people's minds, let alone like strangers. Let's even forget that. Like, let's forget negative people on the internet. Let's forget strangers that you don't know. Let's even think about your close circle. Like, there is a different version of you in your boyfriend's head to the version of you in your mum's head, or to the version of you in your sister's head, or your best friend's head. Like, they all know you and they all love you for who you are and who you present yourself to be, but in their minds, because of the things that they've been through themselves in all of their long years of life, that is still 4 different versions of you in their minds. Does that make sense? So what I'm trying to get at is, it doesn't matter what anybody else thinks of you, especially if it's somebody who doesn't really know you, someone who is projecting negativity onto you. Doesn't matter, because as long as you know that you are a good person and you are proud of who you are, stay strong within the knowledge of that, then I would say that that negativity becomes much easier to turn into white noise. Just let it turn into white noise, just let it be the background. I have had a lot of hurt in my life from lots of different angles, and there is not one person that I would wish harm upon, or wish anything upon, apart from success and love and happiness. So Lucy, if you are talking about people that think negatively of you and talk about you, let them, because they're only circling around in that same negative energy. I can't remember the last time I spoke bad about someone, genuinely. It's just, to me, it's just a waste of my energy, a waste of my breath. It's just not an energy I want to partake in. I just want everyone to be happy and to be loved and to have success, because is that not all that we deserve? We've not all been through enough. Like, sometimes, geez, I really wish, like, when you walk past someone in the street, like, you have like a long piece of paper or like a screen or something that tells you their life story, so that we could all have a little bit more compassion for each other. I remember having a really strong thought once when I first gave birth to Saint, and like, you really, those first few days where you are getting to know your baby, and like the overwhelming feeling of love that you've never felt before in your whole life. I remember thinking really, really strongly, like, it's a thought that's never left me. We are all, regardless of what happened, we are all someone's child. Like, someone gave birth to us, that's how we had to be here. We were all so innocent, so vulnerable, and needed to be loved and protected. Do you not just think we all came from the same place? Let's just show each other some love, because that's clearly what we need, you know? Leading on, how do I deal with my best friend betraying me? I want to move on, holding on is hurting. A best friend betrayal is hard. I think you answered your own question. Holding on is hurting. I want to move on. Allow yourself the grace of moving on. Like I said, you don't have to wish them anything apart from love, success and happiness, but it also doesn't mean that you have to have them in your life anymore. You can still wish someone success and love from a distance. But if they betrayed you, then don't give them your precious, precious time, energy and love. Like, put that into the people that are going to reciprocate it. And I know it hurts. And I know it's a whole phase of like accepting that they're not in your life anymore. But respect yourself enough to know that the people who are gonna honour your friendship are the ones worth giving it to. Would you consider making your own podcast about your growth as a person? This is where I was kind of leading to earlier. I would absolutely love to do a podcast, and it is something that Con and I speak about really regularly. We are constantly going back and forth of ideas and options and, you know, logistics. And it's like, I feel like if I had to really guess like what was going to happen for me in the next 5 years, I'd be so surprised if a podcast wasn't one of them, because it's like I have this yearning inside of me to really talk and share like in this video, but I just haven't really felt as if YouTube or any of the platforms I'm currently on is really the place to do it. And I really feel like, you know, a podcast with just me and you, and I'm in your AirPods, or I'm playing in your car, or on your speaker at home while you're cleaning the house. Like, I feel like podcasts, for me at least, as a listener to other people's, feels like such an intimate space, and the conversations I would love to have belong on a podcast. They don't really belong on YouTube or in an Instagram caption. So absolutely watch this space. It is something I would love to do. I'm just not quite there yet with executing the finalities of it, but one day, hopefully. And if that is something you guys would like to see, please let me know. Please let me know what you would like to hear on the podcast, what kind of styles you like, what you can imagine me talking about, where you think it would be helpful. I'm gonna do this as the last question because I've been recording for an hour, and this is probably a really long YouTube video, and if you've made it all the way to the end, you don't know how appreciative I am of you, but my battery is about to die and I need to get going. But this is a really, really interesting one to finish it on. Do you ever feel like you don't know what you came here to this world for? What? A deep question, and this is really like opening up the barrier now of like my spirituality and my myself, like my higher self that I see in my meditations. I feel like when you don't know what you came here to this world for, you're in a bit of a low vibration. Like, you're feeling lost, you're feeling low. If you feel like that, take some deep breaths, do some meditations. Write down 5 things that make you feel like you, or like what brings you back to you. I literally have this list on my phone of things that make me feel like me. Like, the person I want to become spends their time like this: reading, hobbies that fulfill me, example, learning, cooking, yoga, music, quality time with people with no phone, candles lit, incense burning, not engaging in gossip, not scrolling mindlessly through social media, not worrying about people pleasing. The list goes on and on and on. So then when I've like identified those things that make me feel like me, I do them. After a few days, I'm brought back up to a level where I'm like, this is why I'm here again. Like, I can remember. And I feel like I know why I'm here. Maybe this is a topic for the podcast that I eventually do one day, but we are all here for a reason. Like, you chose to come here for a reason in this lifetime with these people. And I think, annoyingly, a huge part of our life is like trying to figure out that exact reason that we came here for. But if you do the work, you'll figure it out. And I know it can feel really demotivating and really like you're so lost when you don't know what that purpose is. But just do that list. Do things repeatedly that make you feel like you, that bring you to the highest version of you, and you'll soon get in contact with yourself again, and then it'll be much easier to in touch with the feelings of why you feel like you're here, maybe. Anyway, that's gonna go ahead and finally finish off today's video, guys. I really hope you feel as connected as me right now, because this has been a really open and honest and sharing conversation that I feel like has been long overdue, and it's something that I would love to continue. I hope you all have a really lovely rest of your day, guys. Let me know in the comments what you're up to. I'm sending you all a big hug and lots of love. Thank you so much to everybody who asked a question. Sending you all a big hug, and I will speak to you guys in the next video. Bye.